This is Rockin' with J-Man. It's with Crispy James from the Brothers. So how you doing, man?
I'm doing fine. I'm glad to be talking with you. It's a pleasure, and thanks for the invite. How you doing?
Good, man. I've just been enjoying life.
Excellent, excellent.
So, how's life been treating you?
I would say good. We're really pleased to get to make these albums. To be in the Burrito Brothers is not a bad thing at all. It's a beautiful band with three other extremely talented guys. There's Tony Paoletta on pedal steel guitar, Steve Allen on guitar, and Peter Young on drums. Who Peter Young is also the studio engineer of almost all the post production stuff, the overdubs and things. Obviously, since he plays drums, he's not the engineer when we lay down the tracks, but he takes it from there, does the overdubs with us and stuff. He's got his own studio here in Nashville, Ultra Audio on Music Row. And, the Burrito Brothers started 55 years ago. To get to be in a group with a legacy like that is pretty special. I'm happy. I count my blessings.
So now, what is so special about the Burrito Brothers that you kept the band going after all this?
I'm not sure. My take on it is that they always were good. They always had a real inventive, creative outlook and made good albums. I followed them ever since the beginning. I was I was only about, I think, 12, something like that was how old I was when I first heard them, and uh, which is when they started. I'm that old now, and they just always seemed really interesting to me. And the reason it's hard for me to answer what kept it going is because it was always someone else. It was a promoter, a record label, some agent. There was always somebody. Every time it looked like the band was losing steam, or that one incarnation of it was going to call it quits, some promoter or agent or record label enticed the remaining guys to fill it back up and go forward, and that has never quit. We have a timeline on our website, which is theburritobrothers.net, that gives an entry for each year since 1968 of who was in the band and what album came out and all, and it just always has been going. And it was because there was always some outside interest. Somebody said, you guys don't need to quit, we want you to make another album. So it's just is what it is. It's strange too when you consider that it really isn't a superstar, hugely famous group. It's kind of under most general public radar, but there's enough fans and enough interest that it's continued to this day. And boy, I sure am glad to be in it.
Now, there has been 487 past members. Is that right?
Really? Where'd you get that? Was that in Wikipedia?
Yeah, I looked it up. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I would have guessed, I would have said over 100 easy, well over 100, but 400 maybe. If you count, yeah, I noticed how that works. I've been in the band, essentially the leader of the band since 2009, because they asked me to obtain trademark rights to the group, and they asked me to organize the new lineup, because through my brother Fred, who found a record deal for the Burrito Brothers, he farmed it out to me, so to speak, because I already knew most of those guys and had played with them many times. And even in my time, there were like occasions where a guy was in for one show as a substitute, or we had a case where we had this really beautifully talented bass player named Coley Hinson, who I asked to join the band, and he was in for a couple months and did some recordings with us, but didn't stay. He opted to leave, and then because we got a new bass player and we were still at the beginning of making that album, we ended up, I kind of regret it. We ended up taking Coley's parts off and putting the new guy's parts on. And the the Facebook page for Flying Burrito Brothers, past, present, solo, and band, uh, that Thomas Auberner from Austria runs, had a whole, they have weeks at a time where they focus on one guy who was in the group. They had a whole Coley Hinson week. And here's a guy who was in no more than what I just outlined. So I guess if you count all those people, anybody who's played at all with the group, I bet it is 480.
And the band was started by Graham Parsons, right? And
Yes,
it's pretty crazy because you were in a lot of his cover bands.
sort of. Yeah, I was in a band we called the Graham Band, and it was basically, Nashville's an interesting thing. It's a community of musicians. I love it here for that reason. There's so many fine, fine world-class musicians here. And every year there's at least one Graham Parsons tribute. And I'd always try to get in, I'd hear about it on the grapevine, and I'd always try to get into him because I just love Graham Parsons. And I feel that to a degree, I owe my career to him, because my interest in him has played out into where I'm now in the Burrito Brothers. And so I would organize what I called the Graham Band once a year for these tributes. It would be whoever was the available or seemingly appropriate person that time. So it wasn't really a tribute band, like something that existed. It was these things I put together once a year to play the Graham Parsons tribute. And we labeled that the Graham Band, and then took it a step further. One year, I think 2008, we made an album and we got some of the guys who played with Graham on it. And that was really nice. We recorded songs that Graham did. Being such a fan, I had bootlegs and things. I had a lot of information on Graham Parsons, and we recorded things that weren't on his albums. It's like we made a Graham Parsons album that Graham never made, but there were songs chosen from bootlegs and such.
And he is the guy that got his body stolen and burned at
Yeah,
Creek. Is that
yeah,
right?
yes. That's such a strange tale, and what a weird thing to happen. They say that at Clarence White's funeral, Clarence was a member of the Byrds, um, that Graham Parsons and his road manager, Phil Kaufman, who they called the road mangler, um, supposedly said, I don't want a funeral like this. If I die, whichever of us dies first, the other one needs to take the body out to Joshua Tree Desert and burn it. Supposedly that's a known thing, that wish was stated. It seems kind of strange to me, and
Yes,
it's
pretty
and
wild.
it's yeah, it seems even stranger to have tried to carry it out. And they did. Phil Kaufman and a friend of his uh, went to the LA airport and somehow hijacked Graham's coffin and raced out to Joshua Tree and poured gasoline over it and set it on fire. It's kind of sick in a way. I
Like
think,
twisted.
yeah, I agree with Graham's widow who said, "Who does that?" It's so strange. I don't get it, and it didn't really succeed in doing anything because then the authorities had to had to get the remains. It wasn't all burned away. There was a bunch of junk there and partial, it was only partly burned, and then that remains was sent to New Orleans, which some claimed Kaufman was trying to make that not happen, that we don't want to send it to the family in New Orleans. We're going to take it out to the desert and burn it. Well, he didn't succeed. So it's just a weird story, but it somehow adds to the myth and remembrance of Graham Parsons.
Oh, man, that's like it's kind of scary. I don't know.
It's
It's
pretty weird. It's
like
very weird.
yeah, it's pretty yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah. And this band even had the Rolling Stones as members and recorded Wild Horses before the Stones did, right?
Yes, to clarify that, it wasn't really the Stones weren't members, but Graham Parsons and Keith Richards were really good friends. Keith Richards, many, many times over the years, has reminisced how much he loved Graham. And I believe you can hear the influence plainly because when Keith Richard and Graham Parsons met in 1968, the next Rolling Stones album was Beggar's Banquet, which was an earthy sort of back to the roots kind of album by the Stones. And the previous one was totally psychedelic. It was called Their Satanic Majesty's Request and had a 3D cover. It was all out psychedelic, like their answer to the Beatles' Sergeant Pepper. So shifting from that psychedelic to the earthy Beggar's Banquet, the same year that they met Graham Parsons seems to me not exactly any coincidence. I regard, and Keith does too, Graham as having quite an influence on the Stones. And that friendship resulted in Graham asking Keith if he could do Wild Horses. He heard the song and loved it. And Mick insisted that that they couldn't put it out as a single. It would be okay if they want to do it, but not uh, promoted as your main singles, which is a shame because I think it could have been a hit. But yeah, so Graham Parsons and the Flying Burrito Brothers sang Wild Horses quite a bit before the Stones had their release of it, which is a cool thing.
Now, tell me how you would explain your sound.
Well, I come from a musical family and I've been essentially obsessed with it my whole life. I just dearly love it. It's everything to me. And what I'm doing now is the lifelong dream come true. I wouldn't say it only just finally happened. I've kind of lived it a good little bit, ups and downs through my life, which is now pretty long. But right out of the gate, my desire was to be in a band where I was a singer and a songwriter, a member of the band. I never really desired pursuing keyboards as a guy who plays keyboards for hire, like a session guy. I always wanted to be one of the guys in the band. I think that probably starts with the Beatles more than anybody. The dynamic of those four guys was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life, uh, and I've gotten to do a lot of that. When I finished college, I came to Nashville, and I've been in a handful of bands that were very satisfying like this. I was in one called Mr. Hyde in the 90s, actually with my brothers. We did some pretty cool stuff. The James Brothers with my brother Fred and my brother David, and uh, and so I've been into coming up with song ideas, writing songs. I quite like co-writing. I like getting in with someone else and coming up with the finished song together. And and to have this outlet to be in a group that has a record deal in England that distributes us around the world is a really sweet, nice thing. Even though it's not mega stardom, it's still, it ain't bad. You could do a lot worse than this.
Do you ever think of playing jazz like your father?
Yeah, I have, especially the best memories of ever doing that are with him because his uh, warmth, his charisma, his love just made it all seem like, yeah, I'll join in with you. He was so supportive, and he made us realize that it doesn't necessarily have to be uh, like some sort of big wall of requiring um, extreme levels of expertise to play. It kind of seems that way at first, and there certainly are people like John Coltrane and Charlie Parker and many, many more whose level of expertise is off the charts. But you can join in and play if you have enough experience and knowledge and dexterity and interest. Uh, the thing is, I feel like I'm maybe kind of faking it if I do it. I don't see that as my main interest, my main goal, but I do regard it as something that isn't completely foreign to me.
You still play with your brothers sometimes?
I played with my brother David last September, I think it was. It might have been earlier, late last summer, I think. Our dad died a little over a year ago, and we put together this little tribute to him. We're from Wichita, Kansas, and we did it in Wichita. And we got as many friends and people who knew Dad, which was pretty hard. Dad was 93, so everybody who knew him was also gone. But so it kind of turned out to be mostly his children's generation, us, and even we're pretty old now. And we played this tribute, and it was really sweet. But I haven't played much. That's the first time I played with my brothers. Actually, my brother Peter was there too. Um, Brother Fred and I had a falling out when he left the Burrito Brothers, and it seemed like it wasn't on great terms. I never quite understood how I did anything wrong because he quit, but he's not wanted much to do with any of his brothers for various reasons. I think it's his own issues, but I shouldn't even be going into that. But suffice to say, no, I haven't played with Fred in quite a while.
And the new album is Together, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's how we feel about the chemistry we achieved. We finally, after a lot of this and that, people coming and going, we finally arrived at the four of us who we were really happy with, and then that got broken up because Bob Hatter died during the making of it. He got cancer, which was he was already a cancer survivor, and he got it came back after something like 7 years, and that was really sad. We lost him while we were making that album, and we loved him so much, but we regarded the group as being more together than we'd ever felt. And we finished the album with Steve Allen stepping in for Bob Hatter, and uh, Steve did a splendid job. He had the same talent, uh, same abilities essentially. And Steve said that he wanted to get Bob's blessing before doing it. After when we asked Steve if he would do it, he said if it's okay with Bob, which was a cool thing for him to feel. And of course it was okay with Bob because Bob had started all the songs with us, wrote them. The whole album was planned, and all we had left to do after coming up with all the songs and the concept for it was to go record it, but we couldn't with Bob because the there was enough of the pandemic still scaring people, and especially someone like Bob, whose uh, resistance level was real low. You know, he was getting chemo and all that, and he just was not. It was not working for him. He was fading, and I could understand him wanting to see that baby get finished because it was his work highly involved. And we okayed with Steve that we would list Bob as the guitar player in the band. One last time, the personnel is listed as him being in the band, even though in reality, more than half of it was recorded by his replacement, Steve Allen, who we listed as an extra special guest.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Now, does this album have a personal meaning too, as well?
Yeah, I think so. I have pretty much in what I just outlined that we went through such a time. We'll never forget going through it marks the memory of losing our good buddy. I knew Bob for 40 years. He was in the, I mentioned I was in a group called Mr. Hyde. He was in that group. I actually played a group that, speaking of doing Graham Parsons tribute, also had something similar to that where we did Doors stuff. And Bob was in that. And boy, that was fun. That was never a career move. That wasn't like us wanting to make that our priority. It was just something to do once in a while that was so fun, so cool. It's hard to explain. You kind of had to be there. And and also the fact that we've really found our footing for now after probably the first 7 or 8 years I was in the Burrito Brothers as a full-time member. It was still the revolving door of people coming in and going out and figuring out who meshed and whether or not it was working out and all this and that. And for the past now 6 or 7 years, ever since the Still Going Strong album, it's felt like essentially the same chemistry, and we're very efficient and really dig each other a lot. Everybody's really capable of executing what we're looking for, what we're hoping to accomplish. And so it's just sheer joy to go into the studio and make these albums. We feel like we're very good at it and like doing it a whole lot.
What was life like for you on the road?
Um, Hmm. There's really probably every longtime musician would say there's good and there's bad. Getting to uh, I worked with Bobby Bear for years and got to go to England and Europe with him. Actually, I've gone there many times with many other different artists, and that's a treat. I now realize since I haven't been back in over 10 years. Gosh, maybe more than that. Um, that you don't just take that for granted. It's not like everybody, like my wife wishes she could see Europe. She's never been there. And I've come to realize a lot of people say that that get in to see England, going to where the Beatles were and all that stuff, going to Europe. Uh, that's memorable. That's just really cool things to get to have in your life. And a lot of people dream of it and haven't been there. So I appreciate that a ton. And I've gotten to play quite a few pretty high profile, really big audience, great shows with different people and festivals and things. It's I've gotten my share of really nice experiences in it. Then there's the other side, which kind of happened earlier on more, where you end up in some group that you're not super crazy about being in, doesn't pay a lot, but you need the work, and and it's a kind of a grind. Although usually I always got along with I like the musicians. It seems like there is almost always a brotherhood among musicians. And so for the most part, it's really good memories. I mean, I can't complain. I mean, doesn't everybody have a downside to their job? I think most probably more than what I've had to deal with.
Um, what's the best venue you've ever played?
Hmm. Uh, huh. Wow. Probably, what was it? The one in New York where the Rascals, I was on the 1988 Rascals reunion. They played this big show, I think, Meadowlands, I think it was, New York. And in a way, I think that stands out as like the biggest, looking out at a whole bunch of people is pretty amazing. I'm sure, the huge group. Paul McCartney's seen that every time he's played anywhere, but for me, it was not a regular occurrence. And, but actually, the thing I did last Saturday is an example of something that's always been dear to my heart. There's a group called the Long Players here in Nashville who their formula is that they play an album from the classic days from start to finish. Uh, and they get different lead singers of various bands of some degree of notoriety. And I've gotten to play with them many times. I've been one of their guest singers on a lot of their shows. And for whatever reason, they always pack the room, and it's a big room. They play in for the last 10 years or so. They played here in Nashville at Third and Lindsley, and it's a very big room. It's not quite a concert hall, but it's far more than a little bar. And it's just wall to wall people every time. And the band is super. And it just feels like this must be heaven, you know.
What's the worst?
The worst, I was thinking about that when you were talking about the road. I remember, I can't remember who the name of the singer was. It was a girl singer, and it's probably just as well that I can't because it's such a terrible memory. She took a band out to Nebraska, and we, I wish I'd known before because I would have declined the gig. I don't know why it wasn't on time. Maybe just still young enough that I was just going along with stuff. I don't know, but for whatever reason, I wound up with a band that was driving in a motorhome from gig to gig, and we were in Nebraska. We had 5 days without a gig, and they put us in this little one of her relatives' motorhomes, and I had nothing to. It was rural western Nebraska, no city. There's a tiny little town there. So one of her relatives lived there, and they could put up the band for free for her. And I just hated that. That still sticks with me. It's the worst thing I ever had to endure in my musical career because you just shouldn't do that to somebody. Just expect them to just not have a life for 5 or 6 days and nothing to do whatsoever. I mean, I had a couple. It was horrible.
Did you like actually try to find a way to get out, or did you just try to endure it?
Well, I didn't think there really was a way to get out. I mean, I suppose I could have uh, left and tried to hitchhike home or something, but I had my equipment. Um, and the other guys were in it with me, and none of us were happy about it. But God, I don't know. I guess we just kind of resigned to it, not happily though. And boy, I sure would never work with that person again.
Do you have a ritual before you go on stage?
No, I really don't. It's funny. One time when I think it's just a case of having been there, done that so long now that it just feels like part of me. And I feel like I'm ready to go. Uh, but I remember one time Dave Pomeroy, who's now the president of the Musicians Union here in Nashville, um, was saying right before there was this pretty cool Lost Sideshow gig at Douglas Corner here in Nashville that's not around anymore. And the Lost Sideshow was this group that was Bob Hatter, Rick Lano, me, and Mike Webb, and we did Jim Morrison Doors music. And I was kind of just sitting over to the side, not really wanting to interact with anybody because it was just about time to go on, and there wasn't a backstage, so I was kind of in the amongst the people. But I sort of had my eyes closed um, and was kind of minding my own business. And Dave said, "I see you're getting into character," and I thought, well, maybe I kind of was, yeah.
What is your favorite memory from playing the show?
From playing in a show,
Yeah.
uh, huh? I guess this past Saturday comes to mind again with that group, that the long players, to have a attentive, very large audience enjoying every single note, everything I do, and me feeling like I am on top of my game, that I'm the right guy for here and now. That is the greatest feeling that you can have in music. It overtakes your whole being, and I've had that on a number of occasions. I live for that.
Man, I've heard the like, yeah, that has to feel amazing.
Yeah.
You feel like you're at your peak, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And now that I'm old, I'm very grateful too. I take some um, encouragement or hope in realizing that my father, even when he was 90 years old, still had the same speaking voice I always heard him have. I think I do. There's lots of people, men, when they get old, they start talking like an old man, that weird, hoarse, gravelly old man voice. And if you have that, obviously you're not going to sing very well. So I'm appreciative that that hasn't happened to me yet. Knock on wood. I suppose someday that's going to happen, and then I'm going to have to bow out. But as of now, I think I still have. It sure sounds to me like I have the same voice I always had.
It would have been really fun if you were talking and just, your voice just got destroyed and you started talking like
Yeah, just suddenly while I'm talking to you, yeah, well, yeah, I've got the same voice I always had.
yeah.
Actually, you know of Joe Cocker?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's he. And he used to do this weird thing with his hands. He sang, "Bob, a little help from my friend," and he really had a hoarse voice. But I guess it worked for him. That was kind of his thing. Well, then there's like Dylan. He's kind of that, but Dylan has his whole mega career of influential works behind him, so he's not relying strictly on what his voice now sounds like.
What is your worst memory from playing a show?
Uh, I would think it would have to be getting something wrong. I remember one Graham Parsons tribute where I started the wrong song. I was in the wrong tempo, and we had to stop. Well, that's horribly embarrassing. I mean, you can't hide that. The audience obviously witnessed it. So when that ever happens, it's horrible. I'm pretty sure it hasn't happened much, but I can't claim it never had. It has.
Um, how do my followers follow you?
I'm sorry, that one, I didn't hear what you said.
What is next for you?
Oh, well, our favorite thing, well, every time we finish one album, we're already kind of looking to what we'll do next, because it seems to be well, it doesn't even seem to be, it is the priority of the band nowadays. Our favorite thing and our number one uh, thing is to make albums. And it just feels like, it's like an artist in his painting. It's having something to show for your effort and your talent. And so we're already discussing, we're going to call it Time Machine. We've got this album that we're talking about mostly right now is Together, and it's got this spacecraft on it. And this represents, when it says Mothership, that's the girl on the cover of the Sweetheart of the Rodeo album by the Byrds, which was the album Graham Parsons and Chris Hillman were on when they left the Byrds and started the Burrito Brothers. So this is emulating that in a picture, saying that's the mothership, and this is us coming down. And the shack has been a visual logo for us since that album in 2018, and we keep using it. We used it for a Christmas album where it's way back there in the distance, and we used it for the notorious Burrito Brothers album where we're in the windows. So we're going to keep that. In fact, our representative in England sent me a CD case. He made this handmade of it. How about that?
Yeah, that's amazing.
And we intend to keep using that as a visual hook. And so the next album is going to be called Time Machine, and it'll be a time machine. You know how, like in Doctor Who or something, the phone booth
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah, so we'll adapt that shack to be that somehow, and we intend to incorporate some. We're going to have some guests this time around. Some of the people who were in the Burrito Brothers back through the years, which kind of goes along with conceptually calling the whole album a time machine. And I can't help but think that the group is something of a time machine anyway, since it started 55 years ago.
Followers follow you.
You what now?
How do my followers follow you?
Oh, well, I got to get better at
Internet?
get stuff on social media because I've heard people say that Facebook, that's just where old people go, and that's kind of where we are is on Facebook. And plus, we've got a nice website which I invite people to go to, and you can interact with that email and it's theburritobrothers.net. And I always invite people to check out the videos and the timeline because the timeline gives an entry for every year and how all these people came and went and how it arrived at where it is now. I'm planning on working a little harder at getting like, what do you recommend? Should I be on Instagram?
If you really want to get into like my generation, it would
Yeah.
be probably TikTok, like because it's just short clips and you know,
Except didn't they just say they're banning it?
um, that's actually true, but it's not gonna happen because they still need the other states, and it's looking like they're gonna keep TikTok.
Oh, okay.
But if you're worried about that, there's also another things because since TikTok got so popular because it's just short clip, there's also YouTube, and then there's a thing called YouTube Shorts. They're on the same platform, like
YouTube Shorts sounds interesting. We've got a lot of stuff on YouTube. I wasn't even thinking of that as a social media format. I just thought of it as an outlet for videos.
I mean that's what it is, but it also could act like a social media.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Cool.
shorts that would be good because you could like take clips of your videos, like small clips, and just put
Yeah,
them on that. That's how you can get a lot of
yeah.
views.
We need to do that. I imagine that uh, it's not going to be particularly aimed at real young people, although I'm impressed that you're finding us interesting and you couldn't be the only one, but it seems as though the fan base for this group is an older one.
But I think if you use that short feed and stuff like that, you'll definitely get younger people. Most likely.
Cool,
Yeah.
cool. Well, the music's good. I mean, I hope that doesn't sound conceited or something, but I mean, you got to believe in what you're doing, or there's no reason to do it. And I'm very satisfied that we're doing a good job of making these albums, and I think that would show no matter what age you are. So, plus it doesn't hurt. I hope, to have the a visual concept instead of just showing a bunch of old faces. you know.
So do you have any cool merch then? On your website?
Any cool what?
Merch.
Yes, you can get. We're hooked up with a company that makes it on order. Yeah, we've had people buy t-shirts and coffee cups and hats. Uh, I guess those are the main things. Are there? Once again, I should ask you. You're tuned in. What is there something else we ought to think about having?
Um, you know, uh, t-shirts,
Yeah,
and
we said that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, hats. You guys do
yeah,
hats?
yeah, yeah.
That's really it, brother. I'm a bit,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and our stuff is out there. I mean, this we're really lucky that we've got a label that's distributing us worldwide. If people want downloads, it's on all those places where you get them, the regular outlets, Spotify or Apple or whatever. And usually everything's put up on YouTube too, which is kind of weird to me when somebody puts up a YouTube video, but it has one picture that never changes. You know, they'll play a whole song and they have like maybe the picture from the album, you know, and that's all you ever see.
Could you hook me up with some fresh gear, man? Like some of your merch. I need it for school. I need one burrito flying brother hoodie. Or thing.
Oh wow. Okay. All right. Let me make a note of that. Yeah. Yeah, we can I can get back in touch like we did on the message.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Fun,
Cool.
fun question time. It's death row. It's time for your final meal. What is on the menu?
Oh gosh. Wow.
Do you have
Uh
a burrito?
I I'm funny that you know, first thing that popped into my mind, this is gonna sound ridiculous probably, but I love spaghetti and meatballs.
Not a burrito? Not a burrito?
Oh, burrito. Yeah. I wouldn't say I don't like them, but that doesn't sound like my number one favorite. It's funny though, we certainly get our share of, you know, like if we're doing some show that's got some catering, they always love to give those and laugh and chuckle. And it's like, yeah, it's an old joke by now.
Getting old. Come on, guys. Spaghetti.
You know what's funny? The Burrito Brothers, this is weird. When they started, it was kind of an obscure, really weird name, the Flying Burrito Brothers. It was actually from the age of those really weird names for rock groups in San Francisco and stuff, like the chocolate. What was it? The Chocolate Watch Band, the Iron Butterfly, the Big Brother and the Holding Company, all these names that, and they were just weird hippie, trippy names, you know. And I think the Flying Burrito Brothers was actually that, even though it kind of has this Southwest idea to it since it names the food burrito. But here's the thing: people didn't know what that was. It was if you lived in California, you probably did. If you lived in any place with a Mexican Hispanic population like New Mexico, you might probably would have known. But there's a recording of the Flying Burrito Brothers playing in New York, or was it Boston? It's on the East Coast in like 1970, and you hear Rick Roberts say, "Does anybody here know what a burrito is?" And you can tell that the audience is stumped. They don't really know. Taco Bell wasn't around yet, and it's like he goes, "Well, it's a Mexican sandwich," and I thought, I don't know if that quite describes it. It's not. It's more like a wrap.
Yeah, it's a wrap.
Yeah, but he called it a Mexican sandwich in order to identify because these people didn't even know what a burrito was. That's crazy.
And now everybody knows what.
Oh God, yeah, yeah. Of course, everyone knows it. Yeah, probably because of Taco Bell more than anything.
Yeah, most definitely that.
Yeah.
So, if you could have any superpower, what would you choose?
Hmm. Gosh, superpower. What would I choose? Um, Gosh, that's hard to say. I don't know. I want to say something like super hearing, but that's scary. I don't need to hear every little thing that super sight. Don't know if super strength would mean that you don't ever have body aches and sprains or you know anything like that. Maybe that'd be cool. Super strength. I wouldn't really want it to use against anybody, but if it made everything smooth, that'd be cool.
Yeah. So let's just say you could choose any song ever written by any band, and you can change that song to where you're the one who wrote it as your song. What song would it be? You want?
Oh gosh, any song ever. Um, and it would be my song all of a sudden, huh? That'd be cool. Seems like the Beatles must come to mind. Something like
Yeah.
a day in the life, maybe. Oh, wait, I know what it would be. It would be A Whiter Shade of Pale by Procol Harum. Have you heard that one?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I've heard that. I've heard the name.
It's really beautiful. It's just gorgeous. The group wasn't that well known, although they were really good. It kind of parallels what we are, the Burrito Brothers, in that they made a lot of albums and they all were good. But as far as timeless, instantly recognizable songs, that might be one of the only ones. It was their breakthrough. And in fact, when interviewed, talking about the 50th anniversary of Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, when Paul McCartney was asked about how that seemed to be the defining music of the Summer of Love, 1967, he said, "Well, thank you for saying that, but I always regarded it as A Whiter Shade of Pale by Procol Harum was the song of all songs that year."
Well, thank you for being on my show. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on my show. Thank you.
Same here. Thank you very much for having me, Jam Man.
Yeah,
It's been a pleasure. It's been
yeah, it's
really
been a fun
nice.
interview. Yes,
I
thank you.
hope it's not the last time we talk.
Of course not, man. I would love to talk to you at one the backstage of your shows, hopefully.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you so much again.
I appreciate it very much too. All right. You have a good day.
You too, man.
All right.